preschoolers. My name is Betsy and I'm your nutrition teacher. For Harvest of the Month, we're going to be learning about the onion. Have you seen onions at your home? I bet you have. They come in many shapes and colors and sizes, and they all have different flavors. Now, depending on how you cut an onion or cook an onion, it'll change the flavor that it has. Now, do some of you think an onion has a strong flavor, or it might smell funny? You might be right. Some people think an onion has a really strong flavor, but when you cook it just right, it has a really sweet flavor. I think onions are sort of misunderstood. So I want you to give them a try with 3 different recipes that we're going to cook today, okay? Now, the first recipe I'm going to get started because it takes a while to cook, and it's called caramelized onions. Have you had that before? They're really sweet. And the second recipe we're going to do is a salsa called pico de gallo. And the last recipe is a pickled onion. Yes, pickled. We're going to make that too. And you're going to try that in your classroom. Now, before we get started, I'm going to wash my hands. Whenever we start cooking, we want to wash our hands first. Very important, so that our food is safe. Okay? So I have my hands washed, and now I'm going to show you how to start the caramelized onions. Now they take about a half an hour to make, so I did do a batch before I started the video, so you'll get to see them done. It's very simple. So the first ingredient is our sliced onions. Now, I sliced up 2 of the yellow onions, and it gave me about 4 cups. So we're going to add those to the pot. So that's your first ingredient. And then you add a half a cup of water. Very simple. And about a tablespoon of olive oil. And we'll just drizzle that in. We'll put the lid on. We're going to turn up the heat. And you want it to cook on medium-high heat for about the first 10 minutes with the lid on, okay? So those will start cooking while we get to our next recipe. Now, as I said, depending how you cut an onion, it'll influence its flavor. So in an onion, it's made up of a whole bunch of little cells. And if you cut it up a whole bunch, it opens the cells up and it makes it very strong. Now, if you only cut the onion a couple times, it releases less flavor, so it's not as strong. Now, when you cook with just a whole onion, just by itself, and you haven't cut into the cells, it's very sweet. Now, a little bonus recipe I wanted to show you today is you just put a whole onion, here let me get close, a whole onion in a little baking dish. I covered it with some olive oil, I added some thyme and some garlic, and I roasted in the oven about 350 for about 45 minutes. And they get really soft, and you can just serve them whole and eat them. They're so sweet. Really easy. So I want you to try that at home. Now if your oven, if it's too hot to have the oven on, you can just put them in the barbecue and let them roast whole and eat them just like that. So that's cooking with a whole onion. We started the caramelized onions to cook for 10 minutes with the lid on I'm going to give them a stir and check on them. Oh, they're looking good. I'm going to turn it down to low, and you want them to cook for about 30 to 45 minutes on low. They get nice and golden. I'll show you in a second how they look. Now, our next recipe we're going to do is making a salsa, or sometimes called pico de gallo. Very easy recipe. We're going to start with some red onion to start our salsa. Now, when you cut an onion, you want to make sure you can cut off both ends. You have, this is the root end. Let's see, it's like this. This is the root end. You have the little furry parts, those are the little roots. And this is your top that will be coming out of the ground. Now, an onion is called a bulb onion because it grows under the ground like this. And what it is, it's a swollen root of a plant. And that's what's edible in the onion. So, you can have it fresh or you can have it cooked, whichever you prefer. So I'm going to remove the outside of our onion. And then get rid of the peels. We have a flat surface to cut our onion in half. And then you want to lay it flat like that, the two halves. And we're going to dice it for our salsa. Now, this job would be either your mom or your dad at home or your teacher in your classroom. So for Harvest of the Month, I'm going to have you make pico de gallo in your classroom. And I'm also going to have you make pickled onions. So you can taste those too. Okay. So that was pretty easy. Did you catch that? So here is, I think I might use half of an onion in the salsa. I'm going to add that to our bowl. So simple. You know, and that happens so fast. I don't know if you caught how easy that is to dice the onion. Let me show you again. So I have an onion that I cut in half, and I'm going to lay it flat down like this, and then you just make slices. So you have these slices like that, see? And then, with the slices, you cut those into little cubes. Very simple. So you have diced onions. Did you see how quick that was? Okay, so that's our diced onions for our salsa. I'm going to set that up there. So I have in our bowl half of a red onion. Now, if you really like onion, you can use the whole, but I'm going to use half right now. Now, the next ingredient is chopped tomatoes. We'll add those. And you can use 4 to 5 depending on how big your tomatoes are. And then we're going to add a jalapeno. That's a chili. And that's all nicely diced. Now, if you don't want it too hot from the jalapeno, you want to remove the seeds because the seeds are what are hot inside the jalapeno. And then we have some minced garlic. I use 2 cloves. Okay. And then, this is my favorite part of salsa, is the cilantro. And you want about 1/4 to a half a cup of minced cilantro. And I always have a tendency to add a little extra because I like the flavor. And then we're going to stir it up. Is that easy? So we have onions, a red onion. Now you can also use a white onion, which has the tendency to be a little milder than a red onion. You could use a green onion, or the yellow onion, the red onion, whatever you have at home. Okay, so I'm mixing up our onions and our tomatoes and our cilantro. Let me show you. It's really quite beautiful. Do you see? Let's see. There we go. So we have our onions, our tomatoes, our cilantro, our garlic. What else did we put in there? A jalapeno. We're going to add a little salt. A half a teaspoon of salt. Because the salt helps bring out the flavor of all the ingredients. And then we're going to add some lime juice. So if you don't have limes at home, you can use lemons, or you can even use an orange. So the little citrus gives the whole dish a little zing to it. So I'm using my little juicer here, and it calls for a tablespoon of lime juice, and I'm just going to use the whole lime because I have it. And I like the flavor of lime in pico de gallo. You can help your mom do this. Use lots of muscle. Okay, so we have our lime juice. I'm going to add it to our salsa. There we go. And we added a little salt. And it's done. Was that quick? So easy to make pico de gallo at home. Now, should I try it? Let me grab a chip. Okay, with the tortilla chip. Let's see how it is. Because when you're cooking, you always want to taste what you're doing to make sure you like the way it tastes. Let's see. That's delicious. Wow. I love that. Okay. I'm going to bring my cutting board back. Here. I have to clean off our diced onions here. So our next recipe is going to be our pickled onion. Oh, let me check our caramelized onion. See how that's doing. Okay, it's steaming well. Now for our pickled onion, all you need is a jar, a 2-cup jar, and we're gonna slice up some red onion. Let me grab one here. So I'm pulling off the outside of the thin skin. Now, the thin outer paper parts of an onion, you can put them in water and make a beautiful colored dye from them if you'd like to do that. And then you can dye your hard-boiled eggs with onion skin. Another idea. Okay, so I'm going to cut our red onion into some slices for our pickled onion. So I don't want to dice it this time. So I'm going to cut the outside part off. Now also remember, when you're storing your onions at home, you want to make sure they're in a cool, dark space. Okay, I'm going to cut it in half so it's nice and flat for slicing it, and then I'm just going to slice it up. Okay, and I'll do the other half. Now, the reason why I've chosen a red onion for our pickled onions is because they look so pretty when they're pickled. They sort of turn pink. Okay, so you take your jar and we're going to put our sliced onions into the jar. Just like that. You think you can do this at home? It's very easy. Okay, and you smush them in there, press them in. Okay, let me rinse off my hands really quick. The next ingredient is some salt. You want a teaspoon of salt, and you just sprinkle it over the onions. And it has a tablespoon of sugar. Now the sugar is used to make the strong flavor of the onions more mild. Then we add some vinegar. Now you can use rice vinegar, which I like to use because it's sort of mild, or you can simply use a distilled white vinegar. I think I'm going to try that one today. So it calls for a half a cup of our distilled vinegar. Okay, 1/2 cup, and we're going to pour that over our onions and the sugar and the salt. And then we're going to top it with some boiling water. And it's about a half a cup of boiling water. Do you see the steam? And we'll just bring it up to the top of the jar. There we go. We'll put the tight-fitting lid on. And then I would just turn it a little bit like this to mix up the salt and the sugar and the vinegar and the oil. And then just put it in the refrigerator for about 1 day overnight, and then they'll be ready to eat. Now, I already have some done for you to show you and to give you some examples on how to use them. So this is the jar of pickled onions that I made about a week ago. So here's the jar we just filled. It has vinegar and hot water and salt and sugar. We're going to let that sit. But can you see the difference? See, the liquid became all pink. We'll let that sit for a while. And then even the onions become pink. Aren't they pretty? I really like them. So, that's our pickled onion. Let me show you how to use it. Let me set my cutting board aside. Okay, give us a little space. So, with your pickled onions, I made a hamburger before we started the video. I think it would be great on top of a hamburger. So you want to take your onions from your pickling juices and put it on top of a hamburger. Oh, yummy. Let me show you. See? We have our hamburger with our pickled onions on. See? Just top a hamburger. Or you could top a sandwich, or on top of a hot dog, or you can even add them to eggs if you'd like. Now another fun way for pickled onions is a quesadilla. And I just happen to have one here available. So I just put cheese on top of a tortilla, and then you top that with some of your pickled onions. Now you could also add some of your salsa in there. Okay, those are so pretty. So you can top a quesadilla with some pickled onions. And, oh, let me show you how the caramelized onions are looking, okay? So, I'm gonna stir it up. So, see the yellow onions? They're just cooking, and the pot is quite full, isn't it? So let me show you what happens after you cook them for a really long time, and you get this little bowl of golden onions. These are called caramelized onions, and they're super sweet, and you can add them to soups or stews. You can spread them on crackers and cream cheese. They're so good. You can add them to, I had a fun idea. I have a bowl of rice, brown rice, and you just put them on top for flavor. Now, because these onions have cooked for so long, like 45 minutes, they have lots of flavor. Let me show you. So you have brown rice with some caramelized onions on top. Okay? Now, you can also just eat them. I'm going to try it right now. So good. Onions, olive oil, and water, and that's it. They just cook up for a long time, and they're super sweet. Well, I hope you had fun cooking with me today, discovering different kinds of onions, and give them a try. They have wonderful flavor. I will see you next month in May. Oh my gosh, school is coming to a close, and we're going to be cooking with apricots. Are you ready? I'll see you then. Bye-bye.